Welcome to Phonogenics 101, a Riotboy production hosted by Jeremy Gloff. The podcast where people who love music discuss albums track by track. Please hit subscribe, and if you'd like to support this podcast, patreon.com/Jeremy Gloff or Venmo @Jeremy Gloff. And now, on to the music. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Phonogenics 101. My name is Jeremy Gloff, broadcasting from Tampa, Florida. This is the podcast where we talk about albums track by track. This is a casual podcast. It's just some friends meeting, going song by song, talking about history, feelings. We don't sit there and research for hours and hours, so if we get a fact wrong, feel free to correct us kindly in the YouTube comments. If you'd like to subscribe to my Patreon, which some of you have here, that's very much appreciated. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And there's nobody new to introduce here. This is a classic lineup for this Fleetwood Mac podcast. So we're going to dive right in. Does anybody have anything they want to get off their chest before we go into the album that we're discussing tonight? All right. Well, tonight Peter Green has left the band. He apparently took some bad acid, joined something and made a noisy solo album. But Jeremy Spencer has stayed in the band from our album. Danny Kerwin's still here. And we have a new member, the one and only Christy McVie. Is she officially a member for this album? Not yet, right? She's here, but not officially here to one more album. The album is Kiln House. Our beloved Christine did draw the album cover. It's a very whimsical...
I should get that.
Yep, gorgeous album cover. After so much turmoil and trauma in the band, they went out to the country into a kiln house and recorded this album. And that open air, free-spirited sound really permeates the album. So I'm going to start with Tony. This is one of your favorite Fleetwood Mac albums. Let's have you talk a little bit about this.
I love every track on it, even the ones that people say are, there's one track in particular people don't like, but I even like that one, and I just think it's a very clean, spare record, and it's a perfect mix of rockabilly and rock. There's no neurosis. It's completely enjoyable, and it's the kind of music that you can. It's kind of that perfect threshold between rockabilly and rock, and with a little bit of blues in it. And if you like people like Nick Lowe, or you like music like early Elvis Costello and stuff, this actually kind of fits in a little bit with that. I know that this album is a favorite with certain people, with certain guitarists who really hold it up as a great album, and I love it. I think it's one of the few albums that it's one of the few albums I can listen to from the pre-74 period straight through without having to just occasionally cut a track. I can just listen to it straight through, and it's got a consistent feeling. And so I just love that about it.
I feel like when a band loses a heavy hitter like Peter Green, it'd be so easy for the band to just fold and give up. So this is really a testament to that enduring spirit of Fleetwood Mac. They didn't give up. They went up to the Kiln House and put together this album that's totally different than anything they had done, and they forged forward. Let's go to Jim next. What was your thoughts on this one, Jim?
Okay. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I first came across this record. I was at my brother's house, and I was flipping through his vinyl, and I saw this. Oh, Fleetwood Mac! Wow, Kiln House. I'd never heard of it, and I played it there. And I asked my brother, "Can I play this on his stereo?" And he said, "Okay." And I think everybody sort of left the room. I think they went outside. It was a nice day, and I played it. My brother, while I was going to put it on, he said, he mentioned Station Man being like the track, and he kind of downplayed this album. You know, uh, it's not like to him it wasn't like an essential, but he liked the Station Man song, and now that's my favorite on the album. And let's see. Okay, I explained that. And I later bought it on CD. And I remember when I bought it, the jewel case was cracked, but the album was fine. So that's the original from like the late '80s when I got it.
Probably this one.
Oh, just okay. Yeah. So that's how I was introduced to this album. It's kind of very accessible to me. It's kind of in that, because I kind of grew up on the Eagles. This is kind of like, it's not like the Eagles, but it's comparable in a way to some of those real early Eagles albums. So it was very easy to listen to and understand right off the bat. And it's kind of quirky and odd. Not like something that would be on the radio, but quite enjoyable.
All right. Well, let's go to Nick. We're a little bit familiar with this album, but you said it's one that you don't listen to as much as the others. What are your thoughts going into the discussion of the album?
So after I listened to this album again for this podcast, I actually listened to Jeremy Spencer's debut solo album, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the first solo album from any member of Fleetwood Mac. I think it beat out Christine Perfect's debut album by a couple of months. They were both released around 1970. And there are certainly a lot of parallels between that album, Spencer's album, and then this album. For one, with the exception of String Along on the album, it doesn't feature Green whatsoever. The rhythm section of John McVie, Mick Fleetwood are on there, as is Danny Kerwin, and there are a lot of those 1950s stylistic parodies on both albums too. So it gave me just a general understanding of where Jeremy Spencer was at the time. I actually looked back at some publications, I think they're newspapers.com, around 1970, and the few articles that did come up, they were more or less portraying Spencer as the new leader in the absence of Peter Green. And that's certainly evident here. If you remember from Then Play On, Spencer was pretty much entirely absent other than some piano things on Noel Part 2. But he stepped into that void that Green left heavily by co-writing or singing nearly every song on the album, barring maybe 3 or so.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like some of the stuff that Spencer did in the past was definitely a parody of Styles, but on Kiln House, to me, it felt a little bit more like an homage. Like it
very
felt
genuine.
very sincere on this album. Alicia, what were your thoughts hearing this for the first time, probably? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, I think she might be frozen. Well, oh, are you there? Oh, one moment. There you go.
Sorry. I was surprised. It has the rockabilly, which you can find that in country music, which is what I grew up on. So this just seemed very natural listening to this record. And for me, it kind of was, said this before we started, but it made me think of Behind the Mask. It's kind of, when we went through with the classic lineup, that was kind of the odd duck, in my opinion. And so this is kind of, okay, so kind of each side, I guess, if you will, has kind of a country rockabilly sort of album to it. And then it made me also ask, and maybe you know, what was the albums that Stevie Nicks bought? You know, that as it goes, when Lindsay got the offer, she ran out and bought all the albums, she said. Was it literally every album that they had released, or was there a certain number of them?
There's not even a certainty about that story. Sometimes when Mick tells it, he says that he gave her a set of albums. So
Okay.
I don't know what she bought, what she didn't, but they couldn't afford a hamburger. That's what they said
It's
before.
a split it.
I find it hard to believe she could buy all those albums, but I do believe she listened to them. I don't know how she got them, but
And
Well,
then
I
with
think
Lindsay,
this
oh
was
sorry,
one
go
of
ahead.
them because, like, the first record, I could see where her and Lindsay may have not felt like they could bring something because they're not like blues. But this is an album I could see them listening to and go, okay, we can definitely bring something to the table with this.
Sure.
So I was just kind of interested in how that kind of.
In
In my
terms of Lindsay, I believe the only album that he was really familiar with was Then Play On, and he said after Green left, he more or less fell off in terms of listening to Fleetwood Mac. He maybe heard Hypnotized once or twice on the radio after that, but wasn't super invested in the group. So more or less demonstrates where they were in terms of their knowledge of the band.
even he says he says that sometimes, and then sometimes he says he stopped listening after Bare Trees.
Okay. You see, in my fantasy, Stevie, she was in America. If she went to an American store, I feel like the imports might not have been there. So I feel like she would have gotten everything from Then Play On to Heroes. So in my mind, Stevie listened to Then Play On, Kiln House, Future Games, Bare Trees, Penguin, Mystery to Me, and Heroes Are Hard to Find.
Oh, I believe she heard them all. I just
think
don't
so?
believe that she bought them. I believe that he gave her a set. It's a much more realistic,
And interesting enough, on the first White Album tour, they did do a couple songs from this album. And then they did
Yes,
on a
they
more
sure
recent
did.
tour also. So this is an album that has stuck around in the discography. All right. So what do you guys think of the album cover that Christine Perfect drew?
It's one of my favorites. If you look at some of all the intricate details, you'll find a lot of cool hidden goblins, not actual hidden goblins, but a lot of cool little Easter eggs included.
Elves or
Yeah, she went to art school, I believe, for sculpting, and she also did needlework, silverwork, dress design, and her entry into music was more or less when she was serving as a dress designer, or not dress designer, window dresser, and then Andy Sylvester of Chicken Shack approached her to join the band, and she agreed and launched her career more or less. She had played with Sounds of Blue before that, but I think Chicken Shack was her first serious band.
she also did a cover for Bare Trees, but John's photograph on it being the cover.
Oh.
She drew a cover for Bare Trees. It's I believe it was through her auction that I saw it, but it might have been something else. It might have been. You can find it on the ledge though. Someone did post it on the ledge. She drew a cover for Bare Trees as well, but they wound up using John's photograph, which I think is a better cover.
Oh, that's such an amazing album cover.
So I mean,
Love
but
that one.
she had a lot of skill as a drawer and as an artist. So
So then why didn't you not do more of the covers? Sorry.
I feel like she was so like humble. Like they probably asked her to do this one, or she just drew that, and they're like,
drew it. I mean, it fits
I
in with the
enjoyed this cover because it has so much you can actually look at. It's, I don't know. It's one that you can actually, there's something more there than just the dog pulling somebody's leg or the jeans or, it.
I love the insert too
yeah.
with the
It's
photographs
very
of the band.
whimsical.
The insert is really cool. And you get to see Christine in the insert with one of the wives. It's kind of a
Here's the reissue. I have that box set that came out, so here's the
that was the insert and the original insert too.
yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely fits the vibe of the band. You know what I mean? Like Fleetwood Mac does have a certain whimsical feel, and this is no exception with the cover and the everything. This came out in 1970, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
late in this 1970.
This is our ushering into the new decade.
Yeah, it was released in the summer of 70.
It's very much a summertime album, I feel like.
I think it was actually released in September.
Oh.
They
September.
toured
It was
beforehand.
recorded
and
in
then,
the summer. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
They did have a fall tour, that's for sure.
They toured before and afterwards. I think Christine's first gig with the band was in early August, and she joined, I think, the third week of July based
Okay.
on her interviews. I think she mentioned that she knew the exact day that she was asked to join. She rehearsed a week with the band, and then they were out on the road.
All right. Well, shall we go?
They were also really, she would have been even more, she would have gotten more credit on the album. For example, her keyboard work is very much on a lot of those songs, but they don't give her credit
Yeah.
because she was fighting a contractual dispute with Blue Horizon.
All right.
So she couldn't join fully as a member until the next record.
Yeah, that was around, well, for some additional history, around the time that Man of the World was released, it was actually on the Immediate label. I believe Clifford Davis bought out the contract. You can probably correct me on the details, but I think Mike Vernon forgot to renew the contract, and then Clifford Davis kind of slipped under the nose of Vernon and kind of swooped under and took the band under their wing.
All right. Well, let's go into the track by track discussion. We end then play on a very heavy album, very weighty. It was interesting when I was driving. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna start off with something controversial. I might like this album better than Play On as a full album. Like it's just then Play On's a really heavy album in a lot of places, and I had to be in the right frame of mind. But Kiln House is something that I can always put on, and to go from something like, what was the closing track on Then Play On before the beginning?
Yeah.
The original edition.
If your CD Nick's listening to the albums front to back, as she said, next thing you hear is This Is the Rock. And it's a little bouncy. We have Jeremy Spencer, kind of a homage to the 50s. What do you guys think of This Is the Rock?
I love it. It's loose, but it's very clean,
Yeah.
but it's loose. So it's kind of like a loose swing, but the band is in total control of it.
Mhm.
And I thought that, it's the perfect homage to Buddy Holly. I mean, it's just a great, it's got open tunings on the guitar. It's really I love it. I think it's a great fun opening.
One of the surprise standouts for me listening to this album was Kerwin's harmonies on the background of the Spencer songs. I thought, like the doo-woppy things, his voice was really suited for those kind of things. And you had Christine in there singing too on a lot of it, right?
Not on this song in particular, but later on.
Later on,
the
yeah.
album.
Jim, what are your thoughts on This Is the Rock?
Yes. Well, first I'm going to do how it charted.
Okay.
It charted like number 69 in the U.S. and the album failed to chart anywhere, and with the single anywhere except Dragonflies included, it charted 52 in the UK chart. So Dragonfly kind of went in there. It's 52. This kind of pivoted to more of an Americana sounding music. That's kind of why I picked up on it rather easily. And then, okay, This Is the Rock. Jeremy lays down a fun, very strong rockabilly vocal, a bright, entertaining opening track. Jeremy has definitely dropped his stale blues parody act and opened a new door in an Americana type music. So it was one more for Jeremy, but he really hit this one good. He kind of reinvented himself, and this sounds like it's a very clean sounding album, like it's been said, and very clear. And you don't even have to say that the musicians played well on it. It's absolutely pristine, sharp, and every band member just pitch perfect all the way through it.
Yep.
It's really a good record in that manner.
All right, Nick, what are your thoughts on This Is the Rock as the album opener?
I'm probably a little bit more ambivalent about a lot of Spencer's songs on the album. This one certainly included. There are probably two others that I'm not as fond of, and I would lump this together with it. I probably have the most grievances with the drums, the snare in particular. It sounds incredibly dull, very thin. I do enjoy some of the snare drum overdubs that are included on the right channel that kind of pop up as fills here and there. The vocals are very well recorded. It's just not my cup of tea, I suppose.
All right. Now, Alicia, after hearing, the last album, which was so heavy in subject matter, we were surprised that you're out gardening when you were listening to this, and I feel like that's the perfect place to hear this album. What were your thoughts on this song?
Well, I was surprised. I guess it's just because I wasn't expecting rockabilly, kind of a country sound from this, or Mariconda is what Jim was saying. So I was more like, oh, okay, this will work as I was starting. The harmonies are great. And I think that's what really kind of accentuates each of these songs.
Mhm.
There's not much lyric wise. It's just a good groove pickup, and it's just a fun song.
To me, it's kind of like a sunny walk through the garden.
Yes.
Well,
I can see that.
for this album, let's go back to the thumbs up, sideways, or down. I think that'd be fun with this album. I give this a thumbs up. Nick gives it the sideways. Oh, shit. All right.
It was a review, and the review in Rolling Stone at the time said that the Spencer album, the solo album, would have made Buddy Holly and the other people he was tribute make them blush because it was so crude and so, but that this was one that they would be proud of.
Okay.
And I think that, so the mood changed, But yeah, I love this song. I think it's
All right. Well, we move on to track 2, which is the Danny Kerwin track. He, came front and center on Then Play On, and then he moves even further forward with this album.
Okay.
And it's interesting because, I think Kerwin transitioned from that 60s to the 70s and then did even more so onto his solo albums, which I love. Station Man is a song that Fleetwood Mac continued to do when Buckingham and Nicks did joined the band. But one grievance, and I've always wanted to say this out loud to anyone in the world that cares, and I finally have an audience to say it. Christine never did the harmony like she did on the album. When they did it in concert later, she didn't do that, man, like where the note goes up at the end. She never did it like she did on the album.
She did it for the first 2 or 3 tours.
Okay,
but if you listen to the album, the bootlegs, especially the bootlegs coming out right around 1970, you can hear it loud on it.
Yeah,
I love that note. So when she dropped the note in the Buckingham Nicks version, I'm like, I couldn't even listen to it. I'm like, nope, this is not.
I love when she changes the harmony again, because Buckingham asked her to change when she was singing with Stevie and her, they changed her harmonies. But she did it a lot. They stopped doing the song after 72.
Okay.
And then they started again in 75.
And how long did it stick around for? Just it didn't make it to Rumors
76 tour. Maybe.
Right. Well, to me, it's not Station Man without that note going up.
It's the premier album. It's the great song on the album, right? It's like it's the Peter, what's his name from The Who? What's his face there?
Pete Townsend.
Townsend cites this as the inspiration for Won't Get Fooled Again.
Yep.
Played it at the tribute concert as well in 2020, 2021.
Yep.
I feel like some Kerwin songs just really unfold and they just kind of rollick along. And, there's different sections of the song, but it is like kind of like a train. It just keeps moving and, just chugs along. And
those guitars are like smoking too. They're like really kind of like chugging guitars.
Jim, what are your notes on Station Man?
Yes. Well, this is so Mac-ish. This is just really the epitome of Fleetwood Mac in all eras, where you got the groove of the rhythm section, great guitar work, and great vocals. Um, yeah, my brother was right. This is my favorite track on the album, no question. And I have a remark here. Old Christians often remark that they cannot wait to go to heaven. I think this is the sentiment of this song. It's kind of like an old Christian would say, I'm getting old and I'm tired of this world, and in the afterlife it's going to be so much better. And I think and I don't know what the band members thought about in that way, but that's my opinion on that. Let's see.
What
This is
makes you
such,
think that? I'm curious.
what?
What makes you come to that conclusion from the
I
lyrics?
think there's a lot of spiritual songs and songs about trains and destinations and things like that. I just think that way. I think maybe the band members thinking of an afterlife thought on this or not, but it's non-specific where they're going. But it could be that.
When he says that, where I'm going, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he might be going down, not up. Uh, it's such a masterpiece, and it's even better live. Bands such as the Grateful Dead and the Who have borrowed from this song, like someone said, Pete Townsend, never get fooled again. And I was listening to it the other day, and I was waiting for that lick. It's a guitar lick that is not like identical, but has that tone of never get fooled again from the Who. So that was like taken from Station Man. And Phil Lesh from the Grateful Dead said they did a song called Passenger from Terrapin Station album. I think it was like 72 when that came out. And he did this as kind of a joke, but that song it doesn't sound like Station Man, but it has sort of that referencing about going, places and but I kind of get it. I listened to that the other day, and I kind of get it. That's the band, the great Phil Lesh wrote this and incorporated it on. That's a good Dead album. I love a Terrapin Station, all 16 minutes of it. That's a song.
Great song.
It's very epic, and the Grateful Dead and Fleetwood Mac, they weren't like hit makers at that time at all. But boy, they had a following and they were respected in the community, the music community. They were very well respected. And, there were just bands to go to watch, So, and that's about it there.
Something else that needs to be mentioned is Fleetwood Mac always had that song that like faded in. So this is the one where you have the fade in.
Yeah.
It's like the song's already in progress when we started it. Nick, what are your thoughts on Station Man?
So, in terms of the Grateful Dead, I believe the two bands did perform on the same billing on a couple of occasions. One such occasion, there was a massive drug bust, I think the same evening, but I don't think the members ended up going to that one event that the Grateful Dead was hosting. I think I read that in one of the Grateful Dead books I have, but it's been a few years since I've looked at it.
I was wondering if the Dead and Fleetwood Mac were on the same bill. That was something I was going to look up, and I forgot to do it. And I would think they would have. That was a very loose era. You would have 8 bands, and they would play 5-6 hours and do like 40-minute sets, and you pay $5, $15 to go to a show, and do weed and just sit on the lawn. And that was that era,
So other thoughts, thank you for that too, by the way. Yeah. So this was actually relegated as the B-side to Jewel Eye Judy, which had a pretty limited release. I believe Clifford Davis wanted this song to be released in the UK, but Mick and the rest of the band turned it down. So in some circles, there are a couple books that refer to Kiln House as a singleless album, but there are some Billboard reviews that I found where they review Jewel Eye Judy, and it actually did chart in the Netherlands, I believe, the Bubbling Under chart there, but we can get to that later. I think that this could have been a single in its own right, too. Yeah. Maybe cut it down a little bit, repetitive, but in a very good way. It's pretty mesmerizing in terms of its chuggy quality. I love the random conga overdubs that come up only twice or so in the song. He
Yeah.
just loves those percussion overdubs.
It's definitely a vibe. Tony, do you have any further thoughts on this one?
Well, and it's such a fully realized track, and with the harmonies, it's fantastic. But it also shows, how Kerwin was growing, because when they did they did the song on the ensuing tour, and there's they came out with a compilation album of that tour before Jeremy left, and there's two live versions of it. And you can see after the first live version is only just like one of the first shows, and they're keeping it pretty much similar to the album.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of that leg of the tour, Danny is just going nuts on it, and the song is like almost double the speed.
Wow.
And it's really amazing to hear. The book or the compilation was called Madison Blues, but it's no longer available in that way. But you can find all of those songs on various parts, like under different names.
Right.
Yeah, it's been
And I would
reissued on a
recommend
couple
anyone listen
occasions.
to it, because he's just going nuts on it. I mean, it's really you can tell that he really gained confidence as a player through this song.
Okay.
It's just beautiful.
Yeah. This really is a special song, and this is one of the songs that I loved from the very first time I heard it.
And on that album, I think both Danny and Jeremy have a couple of songs that didn't appear on any albums. For Danny, I think didn't he do Down on the Crown, if I'm not mistaken? And he might have a couple others here and there. But looking at the track listing, it kind of demonstrates what songs from the album were culled for live performances, and it demonstrates how they were able to evolve from the studio version into a live setting.
So, Alicia, what was your thoughts as Station Man the first time you heard it?
It's a really good track, and like everybody said, it had that chugging feel to it. It also seemed like it could fit. It's a heavier track than some of the others, so I think that's what differentiates it from the others. But yeah, it's a good track. It's can't say much else. I think everybody's pulled everything. Just kind of.
I think it definitely shows Fleetwood Mac entering into the 1970s successfully.
Very much so.
2 thumbs up for me for this one, for sure.
It's one of my favorite songs ever. It's kind of an odd progression rhythm.
Right.
It doesn't have a brother somewhere with another band, so to speak. It's just kind of it's an unusual. It plays through and it progresses and it builds, but it's the music is kind of on its own. It's its own category somewhere.
Right.
It's really one of my favorite songs ever. It's just growing on me, and this week it's really growing on me some more.
Cool.
It's the riffs on it are just great. But that guy from the Black Crowes, was it Rich Robinson? I think it is, the guitarist from the Black Crowes. He did a solo album and he put this on there.
Really? How is his version?
Good, but I mean, it's not breaking any ground. It's just
right.
It's a more up contemporary look at the song, but nothing, that.
I feel like the original version of this is so perfect that nothing will ever touch it. And that's just a testament.
It's too interesting. Like you said, the harmonies are so unusual. Christine's voice and the harmonies are odd in a good way.
Right.
It's just like the mix is just so weird. And then I just love the kind of like the stinging guitar solos. It's just real over the chugging guitar. It's really just such a cool tune.
I mean, is this the first time we really, really hear Christine's voice on a Fleetwood Mac album? I mean,
the studio album, yes. I think she
Pretty
only
much,
did
yeah.
keyboard work on the other 2 albums, then play on in Mr. Wonderful.
so, when I bought this album, of course, she's not in the band yet, so I was reading the liner notes, but her harmony there is unmistakable. Like, oh,
Definitely.
there's Christine. There she is. And, I'm a
And she's
huge
not listed. She's not
Yeah.
listed because they kept her off because
Yeah.
of contractual.
According to Spencer, I believe she actually did have a hand in writing some of the lyrics.
Oh,
There's an
yeah,
interview
yeah.
from 2010 that was conducted with Spencer, I think through email actually. And Spencer said that the McVie credited was actually Christine as opposed to John.
Okay.
And that in terms of writing, they were situated at a table together in one of the communal areas, but the riff was primarily Danny's.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, I have a similar story where I think in one of Mick's books, he said it's more of a Christine composition than a John, and it kind of lends itself to how Christine is a writer. And I mean, such a good track. It's really a great song. A great collaboration. If it was Christine and Danny, this a terrific collaboration.
Yeah. And it kind of is a signpost for where we're about to go with the next couple albums too, which I love. All right. Well, we are back to Jeremy Spencer for track 3. Now, I did say that I felt his songs were homage, but track 3, I will say, is the one that does feel a little bit like a parody to me. Goodbye, world. Blood on the floor.
Got to show this.
It's often cited as the worst song on the album, but I think even this I think is just so charming. I could still listen to it.
Yeah, I don't skip Blood on the Floor.
I mean, it's so obviously a parody,
right?
I love it, but I don't know what else you could say about it. Really, it's kind of a.
Well, I love the vocal on it. He sounds great. But when you listen to the lyrics, yes, it just.
There's that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim, what are your thoughts on this one? I know you got some notes.
Yeah. A very tragic but funny parody of country and western type song. Jeremy does an excellent job of nailing down the nuances of the Wild West genre, especially from an Englishman. I was listening to that. That sounds like old-timey, gritty country and western. I probably heard stuff like that when I was very little, and this kind of reminds me of something like that. It's and the lyrics. I was reading the lyrics, and it says legs are wrapped around this man's bod. I think he says bum, and that's the English term for tush. Is bum, and I'm pretty sure it's bum. So, that's it for that.
Nick, what were your thoughts on this one? Is this one of your not favorite Spencer songs on the album?
I mean, it's clearly a parody, so you can't be too hard on it. And I think that in terms of being a stylistic parody, it nails it. So I don't have too many grievances about it. Just take it as it is.
Buddies.
And I think the harmonies are charming on there. Like I think it's just charming.
Yeah.
I know Robert Christgau did not like it. He's one of my favorite reviewers.
Oh, right.
He has some nice reviews of some of the other Fleetwood Mac albums, even though he's probably a little bit too hard on Bob Welch's material.
Oh,
he does not like Bob Welch.
No.
But he even said this one, if I can recall, he called it, it's less charitable than one would hope.
Yes,
so
that's
not even a
correct.
really bad, he's really down on Bob Welch and Stevie Nicks. Those two, I mean, he really doesn't like either of those two very much. So even then he's being kind of kind.
Do you have any other thoughts on Blood on the Floor?
I like it.
Hey.
Thumbs up. I give it thumbs up.
It's good. Just the execution of it, just being that daring to come up and just execute it. And we know it's kind of a joke, but it's maybe a little deeper than that. But
lyrically, it segues nicely into the next tune. So it's
Yeah, so the next tune we get a little harmonica. I feel like we just get a little tinge of the blues there in the intro. Just a little tinge. But then it doesn't say in Hi Ho Silver is the next song. What do you guys think of this one?
It's great.
Yeah, Tony, you start this one off. What do you think of this one?
Well, first of all, they did this song even before Green left. You can
Oh,
see it
really?
on the BBC recordings, and Spencer's playing the piano on it for that recording.
Okay.
But and it's so they were reveling in this long before Kiln House. The album version is harder, which I think is kind of interesting. They went a little bit more metal with it.
Okay.
Yeah,
And it's an old tune. It's not a it's first of all, it's not a Spencer original. It's an old tune that they reworked. And I just think it's but I remember when I first heard it, and I had to be about 12 years old. I don't want to tell you when that was. But, I remember laughing out loud. I just thought it was so good. I mean, I recognize it's misogynist, but
Right.
it's still a great tune.
All right. Well, Jim, what are your notes on this one?
yes, it's a very good cover. That originally was a blues song. It was also covered by Johnny Burnett's band, which was Billy's uncle, and it, the incarnations of this is quite interesting. I listened to the old couple older tracks of this, and Jeremy just brings it up to another level. It's a very hard, heavy rocking piece of work. This is a pretty, that's what I wrote down, a heavy rocking song for this time period. Very edgy, maybe a bit metally. It's like Peter Green had a metal, heavy metal tendencies in his work. Unfortunately, some of the things that happened to him caused it, but it was there for everyone to see. So this, Mick and John could have been any old band, any old genre, any time. They could have been Guns N' Roses. They could have just sat back in Guns N' Roses and made it. You wouldn't even notice.
Nick, what were your thoughts on this one?
So I would probably lump this together with the stylistic choices that I'm probably not as fond of, but I can't really detract too much, or I can't really deduct too many points from it because of the fact that I don't enjoy the genre. I think in terms of tackling it, they do everything that they should do. The playing
Right.
on it is incredibly tight, so just not my cup of tea, I suppose.
It checks all the boxes, but not your cup of tea.
That is correct, yes.
All right, Alicia, any thoughts on this one?
The first time I listened to it, when they do Hi Ho Silver, it made me think of Aerosmith's Back in the Saddle.
Well, yeah.
I think they did say that as a lick somewhere, I think in the second half of that song, but don't quote me if you pull it back up and listen to it again. But it did make me think of that.
There's no doubt in my mind that the members of Aerosmith listened to this album.
Yeah, Steven Tyler hangs out with Mick a lot, and they're like in Hawaii, and that last show they did with the Peter Green thing. I bet Aerosmith pulled a lot of pieces from Fleetwood Mac catalog and made it their own stuff.
Right.
I saw Aerosmith in '84, and they played "Oh Well."
Yeah.
Okay.
See, good observation, Alicia.
So I do think that there's no doubt in my mind that they were listening to this and inspired by it.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Well, I still give Hi Ho Silver a thumbs up. Nick with the sideways. And here's Jeremy Spencer, you guys. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, the side ends with a Kerwin song. It starts off kind of like a classic. Yeah. It starts off with a classic, like that kind of mid-tempo, nice guitar. This is a song. This is probably gonna be controversial here, but I always thought the chorus was kind of wimpy. Like it wants to build, but it's just kind of like July, Judy. It never quite did it for me. I like the verses, but I feel like the chorus is just kind of like. So never one of my favorites. Tony, I bet you love this song, so go ahead.
I love it. It explodes. I think it explodes. And then the guitar kind of solo, they like sputtering solo at the end. I love it. It
I like
sounds
Christine's like
sounds like
keyboard.
it sounds like Beatles from like, Rubber Soul or a Revolver.
That's true.
It sounds a lot like them right at that time period.
Well, I was
In
never a
fact, I
Beatles
remember
fan,
when I
so
first played it, when I brought the album home, my older sister came down. She goes, "This is the Beatles?"
oh
She thought it was Paul McCartney singing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like I said, I was
That'd
never
be
a
great.
Beatles fan, so maybe that's why I didn't like this one. Jim, what are your thoughts on
Yes.
Jewel-Eyed? Like the chorus supposed to be all heavy. They're talking about like Jewel-Eyed Judy.
Yeah. The chorus is about as heavy as it gets. It's odd that they picked this as a single in the U.S. This, I just, it wouldn't, you know, I don't think that would have flew, and it didn't fly because it didn't chart. Mick Fleetwood said in 2014 that Christine and Jenny Boyd wrote this song,
Oh, okay.
The
they wrote
lyrics
the
to it,
lyrics.
yeah.
Yeah.
and Judy Wong, their secretary, was the subject matter of this song. So,
Oh, that's right.
oh, I mean, I think I don't know if they were poking fun at Judy or just or Judy was a little bit wild, you know.
They loved her. That was a
Yeah,
known
yeah,
to
she
her.
was. She
Mhm.
kept it. She, I mean, without Judy Wong, they probably, would have ended up in a wreck somewhere, because she kind of kept them going. And there was just, gosh, it happened from this period up until this Lindsay and Stevie area. They were scraping and scratching and just trying to just get on a bill somewhere and play,
Right.
and just barely get by. And the label kept them just to keep. They said the Warner Brothers said that Fleetwood Mac was kind of they were good enough just to keep the lights on in the offices.
They paid the
So
electric bill.
yeah,
That's not
so
but they sold pretty well. They sold pretty well. They sold about 250,000. That's more than a lot of bands at that time.
200 and
50,000 per.
yeah, they were because they had a following. Uh, I think a college radio played them a lot. I assume that, and they were a pretty good draw. They would be on bills and sell records that way. That's kind of the old way of doing it. It's go out in front of people, and Fleetwood Mac still thinks that's what that up until since they're not playing live anymore, they kind of think that's the way to do things is go on the road and build a sales that way instead of like having just putting all your effort into one song and having a top 5 plus.
Right.
They're about just going on the road and playing. So that Judy Wong story, I'm just they're not here to talk about it because Judy's gone and Christine's gone.
Right.
I don't know if there's a backstory there. Are they poking fun at her, or are they kind of complimenting her, or and the obviously the men and the thought this was funny and entertaining, and they picked it up and made a uh, pretty interesting number out of it, to say the least.
Well, Nick, what were your thoughts on Jewel-Eyed Judy?
So I will actually be very positive on this song. I love the chorus and the explosive guitars. The
Yeah.
guitar tone on that in particular is super, super dirty and distorted, and it works very well in that regard. A lot of the points that I was going to discuss have been mentioned previously, but I think that it's more or less a homage to Judy. She was very much appreciated. She was instrumental in getting Bob Welch into the band, and she
True.
was very active in terms of helping out with any sort of loose ends that needed to be resolved. She unfortunately died a while ago, probably 20 years ago, probably
She
around
had a drug
2005.
habit, from what I understand, that really kind of her last couple of decades were not easy.
Oh.
Mhm. But I'm
Oh.
glad that she's been immortalized in this song.
In
It's a
Jewel-Eyed
great song.
Judy.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah,
Alicia,
I don't get them making fun of her at all. I see this as a
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not exactly making fun, but just um, you know, I don't know. It's hard to describe or make it kind of like a satire of her, maybe a satirical
Okay.
in a way.
All right, Alicia, what are your thoughts?
I like the song. But it's because you have so many. It's the harmonies. It's very dreamy.
Yeah.
And it was a good. It's a good song to close out side A, or the first side. So I like it. I mean, and it kind of offsets kind of your funness that you had with tracks 3 and 4. So it's just, it really, I enjoyed it. There's a good pace in this record. So.
I do feel like side 1 of this album is kind of perfect for me. Like, even though I dog on Jewel-Eyed Judy a little bit, I'll still give it a thumbs up.
They played this live, for they played that you can hear what do you call on YouTube? You can hear performances of this from 1970, and it's Christine doing the backing vocals.
Oh,
She does not sound good. She does not sound good on those backing vocals. It's
same with Purple Dancer.
Yeah,
those first few
not
performances
good. It's not a very good sound for her. But
we'll blame it on the mix.
yeah, but I mean, it's like, she's doing it, she's hitting the notes, but it's just not, the quality of her voice is not really good for that.
Yeah, she mentioned in a Contemporary Keyboard interview around 1980 that she was more or less expressing surprise that her voice actually got a little higher over the years, and you can kind of notice that trajectory, especially from Future Games to the Tusk album, and it continued even into probably Behind the Mask too.
The live shows, I think her voice was strongest in the late 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was really, it's a shock to see how clear her voice is live then,
Still sounded good on time as well, for that matter.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, like live, I can't believe how good she sounds in those shows that you get online. She sounds like really like she's holding it together really well, and you don't hear any of that wobbliness that.
So when was this done live?
Only in 71, I think 70, 71 only.
Yeah,
they never did it again, I don't think.
All right. Well, we're flipping the album over, and Jeremy Spencer is back. Buddy Song. Now, I didn't do my research because I'm so fucking busy all the time. I'm so sorry. But if I remember right, didn't he give the songwriting credit to Buddy Holly's mother, so she got the royalties?
That is correct.
I do know something. There
you go.
Yeah.
It's his song. It's his song, but he gave it to her, yeah.
Right, so she could get the royalties.
Yeah.
So, he's saying some Buddy Holly song titles in the lyrics. But it's got that classic shuffle. I love the song. I think it's just another charming. I love the harmonies. To me, once again, it feels more like a homage than a parody. What do you guys think of this one? Jim, go ahead and start this one off.
Yes, like you said, Buddy Holly's mom got the songwriting credit. A very sweet Buddy Holly tribute song that uses Buddy song titles throughout the song. A great effort by the band, especially Mick Fleetwood.
Yeah.
Mick used his skill on Secondhand News, that really fast drumming, just well put together effort by the band. That's nice that a great musician picks, they follow in the footsteps of other great musicians, and this is a fine example of that.
Right.
This is like, no one has mentioned this. I bet Lindsey Buckingham really likes this record. I don't know if he picked it up when it came out or later on, because some of his solo work has a very similar tone to some of the
first album.
Law and Order.
And even
Monday Morning sounds a lot like this too. There's a lot of Holly influence in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, Tony, what are your thoughts on Buddy Song?
I love this song. It's probably my second most favorite song on the album. I listen to it the most. I always go to it first because I just love the second side anyway. But
Yeah.
this like Honey Hush was something that they had done on the BBC sessions with Green. And again, for the Kiln House album, they made it deeper sounding. They put in that guitar was a little harder edged, but I just think it's just such a wonderful, wonderful homage. And I do love the mixed drumming is just a real star of the show, and he uses that drumming pattern a little bit in Monday Morning, and it's just beautiful.
I think Danny's harmonies are another star of the show of this one. I just think he's just in the pocket. He sounds wonderful, and then he would do a lot of harmonies like that on his solo albums. I feel like.
Yeah, he pops. His voice pops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick, what did you think of this one?
So this is probably the last song of Spencer's compositions that I'm a little bit more lukewarm on. It's power pop. I enjoy that genre, so I would say that's better than some of the other songs earlier on the album from Spencer. Of course, mixed drumming, great. I mean, it's a pretty simple pattern on the tom-toms, but super effective, and it sounds great, so that's what matters.
Yeah. Alicia, what were your thoughts when your Gardening Buddy song came on?
It's just a great upbeat tune. It kind of just fit in. So I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something that stuck out to me that first go around.
Right. All right. Well, we're thumbs up for this one for sure.
Yeah.
Nick's like halfway there. All right. Well, it was customary in these early 70s albums that there was usually an instrumental. And this album is no exception. We have a Danny Kerwin instrumental, Earl Grey. Are they talking about the tea?
That's a good question. Yeah.
I feel like some of Danny's instrumentals can kind of be a little interchangeable, but I like all of them. This one's great. I don't have a lot to say about it. Does anybody want to say anything?
Go on.
I was going to say that this song had been demoed in the early 1970s under the track Farewell, and I believe that song appeared on Vaudeville Years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Okay.
And I don't think Pierce even present on that. He was still a member of the band, but I can only hear one acoustic guitar on that, some bongos, and then a little bit of bass. Here, it's more fleshed out, and it's probably my favorite song on the album, believe it or not.
Okay.
I just think it's a
Singing
gorgeous
on it,
composition.
too.
There is
Singing
some
on it.
singing here and there, some ahs, more so syllables than anything. But I would still classify it more or less as an instrumental,
Right.
lyricless song.
Danny's instrumentals were always a great vibe and always just set a great tone. Always like a little otherworldly for me. I feel like maybe I downplayed it. Like I do absolutely love this song. Tony, go ahead.
I just, you look at the album. I mean, I remember, I've looked at this song several times. It's weird. I have a weird relationship to the song because I love it, but I don't ever choose to put it on first. And you look at the time, I think it's like 4 minutes and 10 seconds or something around that time period. And you think it's just going to drone on because it kind of just repeats the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when I'm listening to it, I could listen to it all day long.
Right.
It's weird. It's like hypnotic. So it's a kind of, it's weird how I always think I'm going to get sick of it very quickly. And yet it kind of draws me in and it kind of like keeps me going. I love it.
Yeah, there's a mesmerizing quality to a lot of Danny's songs.
Yeah.
Decent amount of repetition, but he occasionally elaborates on some of those block motifs that are introduced. For the most part, he does it with great success. I would say that one of the few examples where it doesn't work is from the last album with When You Say, where just is obnoxiously repetitive.
Jim, do you have any thoughts on Earl Grey?
Yeah, it's a beautiful, uplifting instrumental. I've noticed a good number of piano parts on this album. Are all of them, all the piano parts Jeremy, or does Christine take part? So Jeremy can play in all different kind of piano styles too.
Yeah,
he can run that keyboard just like strip. That's what's his name? Great Balls of Fire.
Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah, he does that. And he plays real pretty melodies, and so does Christine. So I'm kind of like, I think most of it's Jeremy on this record, but I think Christine gives there's a credit to her somewhere on this album, like the
Not
clavinet.
credited anywhere for the instrument, not credited at all for anything but the artwork.
I don't think
Okay.
they've claimed piano work on any of the songs. We can't really know for sure who played
Right.
which. But I think
Actually, there's been talk about it, and there's actually all of when you hear the Hohner, the electric piano,
Yeah.
that's always Christine.
like on Tell Me All the Things You Do, that's
Yeah.
certainly her.
Yeah.
I think on a lot of Jeremy's, this is more or less inferences, but Jeremy is more likely to play on his own songs, including the overdubs.
I would believe that he played piano on this tune. This sounds like something he could play, but
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is Jeremy on this one, but I'm just remarking that there's, I hear, was Christine on this other one, or like, what is it? Oh, that's 2 songs from now. Tell Me All
Yeah.
the Things.
Yeah.
She's definitely on
And
that
the
one.
live
that's
show.
certainly
I
her.
was listening to a few live shows. Christine did that Etta James song.
Rather
Oh.
Go Blind.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did that a lot. She actually did Spare Me a Little on this tour, because it was the same show and it was a Jeremy number, and then she sang that.
It's
So,
pretty bad too. It's pretty awful.
well, yeah, yeah,
It's a pretty. They reworked that thankfully much better.
yeah. But Christine, right off the get go, they needed someone to fill in, and she wasn't like a bit player. She was, she was probably a bit shy and not polished, early on. But they threw her in there.
Well, she was the most obvious solution. She was living
Yeah.
with the band
Yeah.
in Kiln
Yeah,
House.
she knew the material.
Knew all the
That's
material too. She said, I was listening to an interview from her with, or I think it was posted on the Library of Congress, and she was saying that there was a lot of uncertainty around the time, and that there was a lot of sitting around waiting, doing artwork, smoking a lot of hash, especially the hash. But eventually they were able to hash this all out in a couple of weeks. I mean, a lot of these early albums were just churned out
Right.
one after the other. They had the material to pull it off too, so worked in their favor.
I mean, and I think she was live on those first couple of tours. She was already a great instrumentalist.
Definitely.
I don't think
Yeah.
she was. There was any doubt about that. She was already great at
Mhm.
that. I think
And
she
she
just
won.
had to figure out how to work her voice into some of the things.
Right.
And she won 2 Melody Maker Awards too in 69 and 70 for her vocal abilities.
Right.
But she more or less dismissed those in later interviews, saying that there wasn't any competition.
Right.
I think her and Sandy Denny, right?
Alicia, did you have any thoughts on Earl Grey?
I really like the instrumental. It's kind of a song you can. It's like it suspends time, and you just feel like you're moving. It's like a journey sort of song, but it doesn't give you maybe quite a finite resolution. It's a great tune. So I enjoyed it.
Danny Kerwin had a couple great instrumentals on his second solo album, Midnight in San Juan, where they use like some synthesizers. I love those.
That's the best one, I think,
Yep.
of his solo albums.
I always had a crush on Danny Kerwin, so if he made a song called Earl Gay, that might have been about me. All right. Well, I give this one 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Danny. All right. Jeremy Spencer's back again. One Together. This one's very acoustic, very, very airy, very sunny. Beautiful harmonies. Here's another one. I love this song. Tony, since this is your album, let's have you start this one out.
It's about his wife, Fiona, who was underage, from what I understand.
Uh-oh.
But Mick had to beg him to write a song that was a straight song.
Okay.
He said, "Could you please?" So they had to basically beg him to please contribute something that was a sincere song. And this is what he gave them.
Oh.
It's not my favorite Jeremy on the album, but I do like it a lot. I think it's very pretty.
Yeah.
I think it's a sweet song. But I don't really have much to say about it.
I mean, he's
So in
really showing
terms
his versatility. You know what I mean? Every
Definitely.
song of his is its own color. I'll go ahead, Nick.
I was curious where that interview came from. Was that in his first book, Mick's first book, where he was talking about asking Jeremy to write a straight song?
Yeah, it was actually first addressed in a couple of books about the band from the 70s in the early
Okay.
80s. Steve Clark is based on interviews with Mick. Steve Clark talked about it, but then I think one of his other books, one of Mick's books, he might have even talked about having to beg him to.
I know that in Mark Blake's new book that came out last year, he mentioned that Spencer was more or less ambivalent about putting on the album, but the rest of the band had to convince him to keep it on there. And for me, it's one of my favorites of his on the album. It shows his versatility, like everyone was saying. It's just a really sweet, well-written song.
Right. All right, Jim, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yes, it's a nice love song to balance some of the meanness that was earlier on the album. There's some pretty direct things earlier on. The playing and the vocals on this album have been nothing short of excellent. Too bad this era of Fleetwood Mac wasn't noticed by the general public, but other artists did notice and took much from it.
Right. All right, Alicia, did you have any thoughts on this one?
It's a great sunny tune, great harmonies. So, I mean, this really is a good album.
Yeah. It's very Kiln House. All right.
Well,
Well,
it's one of the tunes that could have actually been carried over to the next album.
yeah.
This could have been recast on future games and it wouldn't have sounded out of place.
Yeah, it's pretty pastoral sounding, and I would say that Future Games is the most pastoral sounding Fleetwood Mac album in their entire discography.
Because I feel like One Together and sometimes kind of have a similar,
It's
like the
same
beginning of them.
idiom, yeah, same idiom, except that look at how polished sometimes sounds.
Right.
When you get there, it's like the band was really getting it together by that point.
Well, I give One Together thumbs up. All right. Well, the next song was played by Fleetwood Mac on their tour without Lindsey Buckingham, with Michael Campbell and Neil Finn. Tell me all the things you now. You guys know, or you may not know, but now you're going to know that when I see a concert in Tampa, I get my own box with 50 of my friends. We call it the Gloft. It's not the loft, it's the Gloft. But I did get the Gloft for Fleetwood Mac, and I just remember there, because it's all you can drink. We have our own buffet. And I just remember with my little cheeseburger slider, seeing a live fucking version of Tell Me All the Things You Do. I'm like, this is something I never thought I'd hear in my life.
Oh, you saw it?
I sure as fuck did. And
Oh, that's why I wanted. They dropped it before they came to Nashville.
And Christine did like a long solo on the electric piano.
Oh, I saw the clips. Don't talk about
Dude,
it.
like I never thought I'd hear that song live, and
Oh, man.
it was amazing. One of the highlights of my life. Danny Kerr, the wah wah guitar. I mean, this is classic Kerwin right here. Tony, let me give you the pleasure of starting this one off.
Yeah, this song, it immediately, I remember when I was listening to this album, like I said, I got it when I was about 12 years old. And I remember I put it on, and when it got to the song, I was so shocked because I was like, this is like killer. This is like hot.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe, I was like, I remember when I was young, I was like, why is the whole album not like this? Right? Because it was like, this is just so damn hot.
Oh, there's some riffs on this.
Now I'm really glad the album is what it is, but at the time I remember thinking if the whole album was like this, I'd play it for everybody all the time.
Right.
But it's really just, I mean, the riffing is so confident. And just when you think it's done what it's supposed to do, then that like extended solo right at the end, which lasts for like 2 minutes, it just tears into it. It's a fantastic piece.
Let's talk about Christina on the electric piano too.
Oh yeah, it's a great
Hot
piece.
damn.
And they did this one live right through the Bear Trees tour. And it's you can hear it. It gets more aggressive each time out.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, well, Christine definitely plays on this. Very danceable. I love the guitar work. ZZ Top definitely was influenced by this track. I think they almost like lifted the tracks on some of their music. but that's great. I mean, that's just a compliment. They played this, yeah, like I said, they played this on their 2019 tour. I missed out. They put in Gypsy. I
Oh,
wanted this
shit.
song. As much as I love Gypsy, I wanted this song. I
You
wanted
can't sing Gypsy anymore. You know,
He said, "Hey, hey, baby."
she sounds like what do you call she sounds like a deep growled man when she sings it now. It's like the voice.
I have to unfortunately agree with you. That and Sarah.
Yeah, it's like those are some of her songs she can't do anymore, and that's one of them.
Struggled with Sisters of the Moon even in 2013. It kind
Ooh.
of lacked the power. I was really excited when I saw that it was included in the set list, but then when I heard it, I was incredibly underwhelmed.
Yeah, once you've seen the speaking in tongues, you can't go back.
Yeah, after 82, she shouldn't have touched that again.
But I do like the addition of the marxophone on Gypsy. Mike Campbell whipped out that unusual stringed instrument for that song, and I think just that weird dimension made it worthwhile just a couple of times, but keeping in the set list, maybe not. They had other material to pull from. Stevie had a lot of good songs.
Well, Stevie goes back.
The average fan was probably very happy to hear.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah.
You know?
So Stevie ever comes back. Stevie back to Tampa. Oh, we're talking over each other, Tony.
Sorry.
You go first.
Well, I mean, they probably were like, "What is this? Tell me all the things you do." They were like, "What is this?" So they got
we know what it is.
And tell me all the things you do.
Yeah, all us old fans loved it. Well, you guys, if Stevie comes back to Tampa and you want to come to my loft, just let me know. We can all be in it together.
Your Gloft?
The Gloft, that's right. I've had the Stevie one. I think she did the arena a couple times. And then I did the Fleetwood Mac tour there. All right, Alicia, what did you think of this one? I won't skip anybody.
This is like the good jam song on this side of the album, I think. It's a good song. Yeah, I can't say anymore because you guys
Right.
said everything. So
Nick, I know you got some thoughts.
Yeah, so those sporadic conga hits that I was talking about on Station Man, they return here and tell
Oh,
all the
yeah.
things you do. And there's also a very dry sounding cowbell, kind of, I guess you can call it the chorus more or less. There are a bunch of riffs, but the
Yeah.
super satisfying there. And it's probably the song that they played most live from this album. It appeared on a bunch of tours. I think maybe early on, the first leg of the Rumors tour may have been included there, but it was dropped pretty soon after that. And there's this live recording. So Spencer left in around February of 1971, if I'm not mistaken, and Green was flown in very quickly to deputize for him. And there's a recording, I think, when the band was in some city in California, where I think Peter Green's pretty deep in the mix. Can't really hear him, but Danny's just utilizing a bunch of wah-wah, and they sped it up completely. And I believe it's a 14-minute version of the song where it's just a bunch of jamming. They start off with "Tell Me All the Things You Do," and then they go off into this other universe, more or less. And
Wow.
Nigel Watson, who was friends with Peter for a decent amount of time, of course, formed the Splinter Group with him. I think he does some sort of conga solo on that recording too, so it's rather unusual.
All right. I'm getting tired, you guys. I'm sorry. Had a long day. Did I
That's
miss
okay.
anybody? All right. Well, tell me all the things you do. Thumbs up. Yeah. Danny Kerwin was on fire on this album.
Pretty much all of the albums he's played on.
Yeah.
I love all of his work for that matter.
Tony, would you do his solo albums one day?
Yeah, I would do. I'd probably do the first two with you. I don't know if I could do high.
Hello, big boy.
I can't really do that one. That's just not.
Yeah, it was a little.
That's really sad to listen to, actually.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
But the first two, I actually enjoy them. I think that they're beautiful.
Yeah, I love Ram Jam City. And what's the album? Second Chapter? Is that the name of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I listened to it the other day.
Not Silver Springs. What is it? Silver Streams.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful little tune.
Yeah.
We'll have to do some miscellaneous Fleetwood Mac solo albums, some from Jeremy, some from Danny. I would love to do some of Bob's solo albums too, especially his first
We're
two.
doing French Kiss.
The first couple, and then maybe The Visitor.
Yeah, I'd love to do The Visitor.
I told you guys, I draw the line with John McVie's Got a Band. That's where I draw the line.
Well, the what do you call it? The first three Bob Welsh albums are really worth doing.
Mhm.
And then after that, it's kind of like then he's just chasing the industry. The industry.
More or less, yeah.
And I also draw the line with Bob Welch looks at Bob. I draw the line.
I love that, but it's pretty indulgent.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So, Alicia, I will spare you. You will never be forced to participate in this podcast and listen to Bob Welch looks at Bob. All right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to say that we could also do Lindsay's last 4 albums too, from Under the Skin to a self-titled album too. That would be fun.
Yeah, I feel like we need to finish Lindsay off. All right. Well, we have one song left on the album proper. Mission Bell. This was the cover, correct?
That's correct.
Man, though, what a beautiful way to end the album. The way the harmonies are. You can hear. Can you guys hear Christine in this one? I feel like Christine's
She's
definitely
on here.
And just the reverb on there. And Tony, I'm always gonna call on you first because I feel like this is your special album. So, what do you think of Mission Bell?
I think of the Beach Boys when I hear it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of. I mean, I know it's obviously a Buddy Holly send up, but it's those harmonies and everything, and you can tell they were already listening to the Beach Boys, and the idea that Lindsay brought the Beach Boys into the Mac is a myth. They were listening to it beforehand, and it's just a beautiful. I just think it's a really beautiful mood and such a cool way to end.
Is this the farmer's daughter's uncle?
It sounds a lot. You're right. It sounds a lot like Farmer's Daughter.
Jim, what are your notes on this one?
Yes, a well done cover of a pop song from 1960. A sweet ending to a well coordinated album. A good group of songs, kind of really on their own. Or what is that? And then, but you put them all together, they kind of fit.
Right. And I'll go as far as saying I like the cover version here better than the original. I just think there's a certain little quaint magic to it. Like they captured the sun from the Kiln House.
There's a lot of pop music from the 50s, 60s were very kish or very embarrassing. And, like this song, the original, I'm not a big fan of. It's very corny and,
right.
But that's why they invented rock and roll.
Yeah. All right, so Nick, what are your thoughts on Mission Bell?
So I'm pretty sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is the only Fleetwood Mac song, I should say, that features tubular bells. It's included on the cover, or it's included on the original, it's present here. I'm curious who played it. I mean, it's a relatively easy part. Maybe it's either Mick or Christine who probably played the tubular bells, or Jeremy for that matter.
Right.
But the use of mallet percussion, it's pretty rarely used on Fleetwood Mac songs. The only ones I can come up with are Born Enchanter with a vibraphone. I think Bob played that. I think there's a vibraphone on Empire State. There might be a xylophone as well on Love and Store too, but that's more or less it. Of course, the steel pan on Did You Ever Love Me, which I love.
Isn't there
that's great.
Isn't there a xylophone on Stevie's Touched by an Angel? It's probably a synthesizer. Maybe it was Judy Wong on the tubular bells.
Yes, or Mike Oldfield.
Yeah. Alicia, what do you think of this one when you heard it?
I was blown away. This was one that, as it got started, I stopped gardening and really just listened to it. It was
right.
It's a really, really beautiful song, and the harmonies and the way they did it.
Yeah, perfect. When the mix is right with Christine, she's just the absolute best. And I think her voice is so unique. It took, as Tony mentioned, a minute to get the mix right. Because when Christine's mixed wrong, it can be a hot mess.
Yeah, if you listen to her on the what's the one that Oz Festival.
Oh,
good when she's singing, but then there's that secondhand news, and from the Oz Festival, and the way that they listen to her at the end when they're like, "I'm just secondhand news."
Oh, yeah, I remember hearing that.
She sounds horrible,
right?
Because they just the way. Yeah.
All right, so we do have two more songs to talk about. There was a standalone single that was released between this and the next Popper studio album. Uh, what was the A side?
It was Dragonfly.
So
Dragonfly.
Dragonfly.
Supposed to be a single.
So Dragonfly, to me, was another song that really ushers them into the 70s. I listened to both the studio and the live version. I think it's a wonderful song. And Alicia, let's have you start this one because you felt like it was better than anything on the album, right?
Yes, this was the one that I was like, I wanted to know where I could get a copy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I really loved the lyrics for this one. It just, I guess because I was gardening, it just made me feel like it was just perfect. The imagery and everything. It's,
Right.
With Chewy Pharmacy, get all your pet medication.
Oh, well, all right. A little ad revenue for the podcast. Was Spencer on these songs?
I think Purple Dancer, not Dragonfly.
He wasn't on Dragonfly for sure.
Okay.
In fact, the early promotion for Dragonfly shows Welsh on it.
Really?
He wasn't recording with them, but the lyrics are from a poet.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
I don't know the poem, but that's probably why Alicia's settling on the lyrics because they're really beautiful.
WH
They are.
Davis is the name.
And that's a real poem that he's working with. It's I think when I remember years ago someone asked me what's your top 10 Fleetwood Mac songs. This was in the list.
Okay.
I think it's like one of the best Fleetwood Mac songs in the entire catalog.
And
Wow.
Chris did that a few times where he took a poem and set it to music.
That's just another example.
And this is just I think it's some of the chords he's hitting here and the beautiful solo and just the mood. Everything is just, I wish they had done more songs that sounded like this.
Right.
Because this is really something.
And with all the instrumentals that Danny had laying around, he could put his thoughts on a gray day to music and not have it just be a poem. But Mrs. Scarrett would have been out of a job. I'm skipping ahead 2 albums ahead of ourselves. Okay. So, Jim, do you have any thoughts on Dragonfly? And then I'll come back to you, Alicia.
Yeah, a very melodic and poetic. The music seems murkier and muddled than the main Kiln House album. This is a nice handoff to the Bob Welsh era in the band.
Right.
It's pretty cool song. It's a very acid rocky.
Yeah.
That video is a lot of bands were doing these weird imageries, and that's what they were doing when they put that out.
All right, Alicia.
so my question, where can you get this song?
I know you can't get the original on iTunes. You gotta, that album, The Greatest Hits from Fleetwood Mac. It's like from 1970.
Yeah.
That was when it was first in album form.
The one with the red cover is kind of like a
red cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of limited releases, I think, for Record Store Day. One may have been around 2014. There could have been another around 2021. And I think that's one of the only reasons why it charted in any capacity for its later editions, because for the Record Store Day, you had limited editions, I think a couple hundred or 1,000 copies, and that was enough to catapult it to the physical singles chart in the UK.
And if you get the Rhino first 5 albums,
It might be there.
it's a mono release of it.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's from the, if you get the from Then Play On to Heroes, they add material on it, and that's on there, but it's a mono version. It doesn't sound bad at all, but I wish you could get the stereo version.
Yeah, and that visual recording is actually live, I think, at the Beat Club, if I'm not mistaken. It was a performance in Germany.
Oh,
They
yeah.
did Lay It All Down and Woman of 1,000 Years. They had a bunch of unusual psychedelic close-ups on Danny Kerwin. Bob Welch was in the band at the time,
Yeah.
so they occasionally panned to him. But it was mostly just close-ups on Danny. I think Mick had his drums muted with towels for that recording, but if you listen to the studio version, it's replaced with a bunch of rim clicks.
Oh.
I only heard the actual studio version pretty recently. I was only familiar with the live version for a very long time. That's the one that probably has the most plays, the live recording.
Right.
And listening to it, There are a couple notes actually where it sounds like John McAfee's bass is a little out of tune. It irks me. It's a little loud, but for other portions of it, it's a little better, I suppose. I think
Okay.
it's a good
The
song.
live version is on what album?
The
It's
live
on,
version is just on YouTube that you can
YouTube.
easily
Yeah.
search.
Okay.
And you can also find one that they did in San Bernardino, maybe California, maybe.
Yeah,
No,
They did that there too, and you can really hear Christine,
I watched that. Yeah.
and that's beautiful. That
Yeah.
was
Okay.
that's where she sounds fantastic in the mix.
and that's when they
Um,
did the 14-minute version of "Tell Me All the Things You Do."
Yeah.
so do we all give Dragonfly a thumbs up?
Oh yeah.
All right.
I
Peter
don't
Green also
understand
said
why
it was
they
one of
didn't.
Danny's. Go
I
ahead,
don't
sorry.
understand what. Oh, I'm sorry, go on, Nick.
I was going to say that in the liner notes for Valve Years, I'm pretty sure Peter Green commented that it was one of the best songs that Danny ever wrote.
Hmm.
So that's a high praise. But
Yeah,
then
I don't
again, he also
understand-
praised When You Say.
I don't understand why they never put it on future games.
Yeah.
I mean,
They only had 8 songs.
I know, they had
originally
the
had 7
room.
too.
they had the room, so why not put it on there? Because it would have been it's like Jim said, it really does
Yeah.
transition to the psychedelia of the early Bob Welsh.
Right.
Perfectly fits on that album.
It would have been a great
Yeah.
asset to that album.
And it was a Reprise single. It was released on the Reprise label.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what about the B-side, Purple Dancer? Well, I don't think Danny's lifting any classic poetry for this one. Was he talking about Prince before Prince was Prince? Yeah, this was not one of my favorite Danny Kerwin songs.
I
It's
love
very
it.
long.
You love it, Jim? Go ahead. Plead your case.
Yeah, Christine is very prominent playing here. Welcome to the band. I mean, this is kind of like their first, where she's really prominent with the band. Such a great jam with spacey lyrics. I never heard this until like 3 days ago. Yeah.
Oh.
I should be kicked out of the Fleetwood Mac Dome because I haven't heard Purple
Uh-oh.
Dance.
We're going to Bob Weston you and kick you out.
Yeah, we got to kick you. Let's see. It's very nice. In an alternate world, this would have been a great single. This is a well-formed, very good jam. It's very like Procol Harum, Traffic, and Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in that era with a lot of good, psychedelic acid rock groups, but it's way up there in they should be very proud of this. This is a great piece of work.
What do you think Danny's talking about? Purple Dancer.
Probably a purple wrapper on some acid.
All right, Tony, what are your thoughts on this one?
I like it a lot. I mean, I don't think it's his best tune, but I think it's really well executed, and it would have been an asset on Kiln House. I think it would have been. I don't know why, maybe it wasn't written yet, but
Right.
it would have been. It would have fit beautifully into Kiln House.
I was reading the YouTube comments. And someone said Jenny Boyd wrote this.
Oh.
But then someone below that said, well, show me to prove it, So see, Mick, John, and Danny are given writing credits to this. So it could be, I'm thinking it might be a true story. The lyrics aren't like something Danny would do, or this is something like someone outside that the main band wrote it. But very good lyrics, actually. Very very put together lyrically, I think.
I'm going to say it was Judy Wong once again.
But I mean, I was reading YouTube comments, and it's Jenny Boyd, and then in that comment that they said I think the album, the label or the band didn't want women be credited,
Oh,
on this record. So, well, they made up for it.
right. And for the record, we will never trust
Yeah.
YouTube comments as a reliable source of
Well, I mean, that's
information.
what it's an interesting.
Yeah,
Someone was
an interesting aside.
I
yeah,
think that they wanted that so that Mick and John could get royalties.
That was
Yeah.
often the case. I mean, they've done it on a bunch of albums, including the song Winds of Change, if I'm not mistaken, from the Time album. I
Oh.
highly doubt that they wrote that song.
All right. And it was interesting because Fleetwood Mac often did have those like little standalone singles between albums, and this is the last one, right? After this, they
Yeah.
just had their proper releases.
I mean, they had the re-release of Albatross in 1973, but in
Right.
terms of actual new material, I can't think of many. Fireflies in 1980, but that was from the live album.
Yeah, that's from the live one. And Jim, I thank you for always reminding us to bundle these into the discussions. I appreciate it.
well, I think or in the last time we did the previous album, I had these at least Dragonfly in mind,
Oh, okay.
and then I saw that Purple Dancer was written right within the same year. I said, and then I listened to it. Jeez, that's a great track. That's like a the lost well, better late than never. But
Alicia, do you have any thoughts on Purple Dancer?
It's a great jam song.
Yeah.
I mean, that little standalone, Dragonfly and Purple Dancer, that would have been nice to include them on Kiln House.
Yeah.
May have not fit. Well, I
This is
think
more-
Dragonfly would fit because it would have kind of that whimsical child feeling.
Especially in the age of the deluxe edition, like,
Yes.
with the like 18 track version of Then Play On with every single known to man. Give us the Kiln House reissue with these that are actually on the same label.
Yeah.
Well, let me take a look. Let me take a look at my Rhino for a second.
Okay, perfect. And then when Tony gets back,
Rhino.
we are going to
Rhino
rank.
re-release. I'll just let you know what if it's on here or not.
Okay, perfect.
And we can also talk about the aftermath of
It
this
is on the
album.
Rhino re-release.
Okay.
Oh, it
As
is?
well as the single versions of Station Man, July Judy, and Dragonfly.
Awesome. That was a nice little box set. I did love it.
They didn't include anything for Penguin in terms of bonus material, if I'm not mistaken.
There's nothing for Penguin because they didn't have it. I don't
You know,
think.
Dave Walker wasn't going to do it.
We'll get to that eventually.
Yeah, we'll get to that eventually.
The real gem is for future games on that thing. They got a lot
Oh.
of future games on that.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that. But we can also talk about the circumstances surrounding Spencer's departure from the band, because
Yeah.
it's one of the most interesting circumstances in terms of the band's history there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I believe they were on an airplane going to San Francisco, and around that time there had been an earthquake, if I'm not mistaken, which reportedly freaked Spencer out. If I have any details wrong, you can correct me. And I think leading up to that point, Spencer had been a little bit dissatisfied with his contributions. In some interview, he said that he was listening back to recordings from live performances, and he heard Black Magic Woman, thought it was great. And then the next song was one of his songs. And just comparing those back and back, he kind of viewed it as inferior largely to Green's work. And he was looking for also, in addition to that, to kind of a spiritual reawakening. His mind wasn't essentially in the right place, and he was going, I believe, to get a magazine, or at least that's what he told the band. And
Oh, yeah.
he came across a member from the Children of God, as they were known at the time, which was a new religious cult founded by David Berg, if I'm not mistaken, later became Family International. And they talked to him, had some conversations. Whatever they were talking about with Spencer aligned with his beliefs about religion. So he left with them, unbeknownst to the rest of the band. They had a concert that same night. They had to cancel it. And for the next couple of days, they sent out a search team, trying to put it out into the press, television trying to find Spencer. They went to a couple of locations, eventually tracked him down. I think by the time they found him, he had shaved his head completely and
Oh
would only
no.
respond to the name Jonathan. And they had about an hour or so, or a couple hour conversation. It may have been one of the roadies who was talking to him, and maybe another member, if I'm not mistaken. And by that point, it was established that he was unwilling to join the band for the remainder of the tour. So what happened was they were able to convince Peter Green to come back, fly into the US, and it was done on the condition that it would largely be based on jams. If you listen to some of the earlier recordings from the tour's San Bernardino, if I'm not mistaken, that one recording, you do hear some actual songs being played, but if I'm not mistaken, became even more jam oriented as the tour progressed. And it was about 6 or so weeks. Peter Green fulfilled the obligation, and then he returned back to the UK. And by that point, he was more or less deteriorating and withdrew largely from music, with the exception of a few appearances here and there. I think with Penguin, of course. I think I was reading Martin Selman's book, and if I'm not mistaken, he was planning on recording additional tracks for a potential follow-up to End of the Game. He had a couple songs called, I think Uganda Woman was one, and he had maybe another. So they were eventually lumped into a re-release of End of the Game, and he never ended up recording more material. And I think he was also solicited for some other band because this one band's guitarist died. So he came in for a couple of rehearsals and then he dropped out at the last minute. After that, kind of went into obscurity until his reemergence in 1979 with a slew of pretty decent Peter Green albums, for that matter.
Cool.
So that's the history.
They were leaving San Francisco, and it was when they re-arrived in LA. That's where the earthquake was. And it was he said he was going out for a book.
Yes, a magazine or a book, one of the two. Yes.
And he never came back.
He never came back.
For Spencer, yes.
Yeah, and they when they brought in Green, they split what we're hearing the San Bernardino shows. We're hearing the first part of the show. They had two sets. And the opening sets would be largely Christine and Danny just doing shorter songs. And then there would be the jam at the end. And apparently many of especially Mick, John, and Christine didn't know what they were going to play. They would get on stage and you had no idea. And they would jam, and then Peter Green would go up to the microphone and say, "Yankee bastards." And all the audience would applaud and think it was amazing. So it was their most successful tour up to that date. And yet the band was absolutely miserable doing it because they weren't jammers.
Right.
I think Danny enjoyed it. There were some interviews where Danny talked about liking it, but I don't think the rest of the band could handle
Especially Christine, she didn't really like that.
Right.
Well, I don't think that they could handle it. I don't think they could handle the improv.
I mean, they're great musicians in their own right. It's just probably not their bread and butter.
Right.
Yeah, they're not part players. They're part players. They're not, they're ensemble players.
Right.
They're
all right.
as musicians.
So Kiln House by Fleetwood Mac. Scale of 1 to 10, everybody. Tony, I feel like I know where you're going to... Let's start with you.
I give it a 10.
A 10?
For what it is, I give it a 10. Yeah.
All right, Jim Miller.
Yes, 9.5. It does miss Peter Green.
Okay.
I mean, they got it together, and they put a very solid record, a very influential record too. But it's no more Green. I mean, but it's not a 10. It's a 9.5 to me. But I really love. It's very accessible to me. Very easy for me to pick up and listen to, and there's no skippables really on this record for me. But it's just short of the Peter Green. That was a special era. I wish they would have been. I don't know what would have happened if Kerwin, Jeremy, and Peter would have went 4 albums together and did several tours. What what it became of. Would have been like a Led Zeppelin. You know, Led Zeppelin's a hard one to like, reach because that was a great era. But I mean, they could have been in that vein. They could have been up in that stratosphere, but they weren't. It didn't happen.
All right, so Nick, Kiln House.
So in terms of songs that I regularly go back to, there are only a couple, Earl Grey and Jewel-Eyed Judy. As a cohesive album, it's great. I think that the execution is wonderful as well. I would probably give it a 7.3,
Oh,
probably the worst out of anyone here, but even my least favorite Fleetwood Mac albums, there are a lot of things to enjoy from them.
yeah.
And I would probably even put it around the bottom of the barrel. But that's just a testament to how great all the other Fleetwood Mac albums are.
All right, Alicia.
I really, really enjoyed listening to it this evening. Um, what makes me contemplate or struggling is I would say a 10 out of 10, but I don't think it's as good as Rumors, which is kind of like their benchmark. So it's, can I put it like that? It's like, it's a great album, but on the bigger scale of the catalog, it may not be, maybe more like a 7 or something like that. But
Yeah, I tend to rank the albums based on what they set out to do.
Yeah.
And I think this album sets out to do what it does.
yes,
I mean,
It's
I think
ambitious
you'd
for them.
I think you'd have to be crazy to think that this surpasses Rumors. I mean,
right.
I mean, I think I mean, that's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different
Yes.
thing. But I love that.
All right. Well, I guess I would give this album.
Okay.
You're gonna have to wait for me, Jim. I think I would give this album a 9 out of 10. It's
There you
something
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think. I think it was daring. I think it takes balls for a band to carry on after Peter Green leaves and make a great album after Peter Green leaves. That doesn't. I almost wonder if Green would have stayed in the band if it would have gotten too heavy and almost too internal and too dark. Like I think after Then Play On's not an album that I go back and listen to a lot because it's tortured, and I don't want to feel tortured. I'm looking more for Kiln House in my life, and that's why I think this is a great follow up. So I give it 9 out of 10. All right, Mr. Miller.
Yes. This album, in a way, made like Rumors possible, just because of the very precision of the recording. I mean, the good backing vocals. There's a lot of good backing vocals on this record. There's a lot of there's a lot of space between the notes. Rumors, you think of Rumors being kind of a real filled-in album, but it's got some space too, in between the notes. You should watch this one guy. There was a Gen Z producer that he listened to Rumors for the first time.
I watched that.
Yeah, and he he thought Christine was a guy.
Oh,
So, but he had a good, how was this? He had a good description. He reflected on how it was why was this recorded this way, or what technique. And there was when Mick grabs the cymbal on the chain,
Hmm.
I mean, he
Cymbal
says,
choke.
yeah, he said, yeah, that's what he says. Is that an error or is that on purpose? So it's nice that younger people that are 50 years removed, or 30 and 40 years removed from
Nick.
Rumors, they
Alicia.
they hear it for the first time. And he sort of said that it's a touchstone for lots of bands going to this day. It's got early rock and roll, it's got blues, it's got country, it's got so many influences put together and just we braid it in together. And I think last year Rumors was I think it was the 23rd highest selling album still.
Gets a lot of streams.
Yeah.
That's why.
I don't know how people buy music now. Do they buy vinyl? Do they add everything up? Do they buy
Yes, they
Streams
had it
are
all up.
calculated into the formula. I think
Yeah.
they comprise a decent percentage in terms of the Billboard 200 at this
Yeah.
point. Used to be more weighted towards sales, but if you want to chart on the 200,
I mean,
that's
there's
how you
like
do it.
Spotify listens, and there's like
Apple
there's
Music
so many
too.
different ways people access music, and I look at like iTunes albums a lot, and Rumors pops in there just more than half the time in the top 1 and 200 or whatever it is. So it's going to go on forever. It's just one of those things where because it's got so much of the culture of musically, the country, the blues, and that producer, he just emphasized that there's so much like bluegrassy influences in it. So, and there it is.
Well, Jim, to get back to one of your earlier comments about Kiln House,
Yeah.
the idea that it did make Rumors possible, not only because the band continues, but it's really on Kiln House that we begin to see a band aesthetic really forming, where it's like, and you saw this with Green too, but what we're seeing is less is more.
Right.
The idea
Yeah.
of creating a lot of space
Mm-hmm.
in sound. And it really does carry through all of those pre-74 albums. And you see it really clearly here and on future games.
Right.
Definitely
Yeah.
future games.
I'm going to make a bold statement and say that I think Kiln House is the most important album in the Fleetwood Mac catalog. Because if they hadn't done this, nothing after it would have happened. Most bands would have stopped. But they made this album, and then all the other ones happened. So,
Thank Mick for that.
yep. Thank you, Mick.
Yeah, he
You can
said
thank
that
Mick
at
for
one
that,
point,
'cause
every
he,
member essentially quit, and he had to convince them one by one to rejoin just after a very rough day where they were directionless. So Mick
When was
was the
this?
glue very much to keep them together.
For Kiln House.
Yep.
Around the time of Kiln House.
This
Yeah.
little album made everything after it possible. More so than any other ones. They could have ended with Then Play On and had that nice little series of blues albums and been that band. But they were this band. And in 2 months, we will meet again to talk about one of my favorite albums of all time, Future Games.
Excited for
Yeah,
that.
there's one thing I left out. Christine kind of described this era as like getting beaten over the head with a club.
Yeah.
There was a lot. I was listening. I listened to one of their live shows and it was not. They weren't just there. It was nothing was. It just wasn't a very good show. I don't know. Things weren't clicking. And some other shows in this era, they were clicking rather well. And and the crowd would be polite and clap. It was, I don't know if the recording of it wasn't done very well, but and they would take in between songs, they would take like a half a minute to a minute or so to get to the next song and like find the tuning, and that really breaks up the mood. So
Yeah.
it's, I mean,
Well,
you know,
for
like
the modern shows, they
the
more or
modern
less
show-
have to be coordinated with illumination, any sort of visuals on the screens.
Right.
Right.
Whereas for the earlier shows, there could be deviation where they could come up with a set list on the spot. And there's a lot less flexibility
Yeah.
in terms of getting all the parts coordinated for these live shows, especially from the 21st century onwards. So you do have those awkward gaps. That's kind of adding to the character of the shows.
but it happens on every song that they were finding the right tuning.
Well, that's largely Danny, from what I hear.
Yeah.
Danny was like a stickler for tuning in between the tunes.
Yeah.
That's how he
And,
got in the argument with Welch and
Yep.
resulted in
Yeah.
his ouster.
I mean, because he was stickler for making sure that everything was tuned. And so, and hey, it sounded great when they started playing. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, my friends. Well, my eyelids are getting heavy,
Okay.
and I have to be up at 6:30 a.m. So, Thank you to my Patreon subscribers, to the subscribers, to Fleetwood Mac, and to you guys for being willing to meet to talk about these early Fleetwood Mac albums. You guys are all awesome. I can't wait to talk about these next few albums because we're getting to some of my favorite albums of all time. And I will see you all in 2 months.
In May sometime.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.